Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final Elevate webinar of 2024. I cannot believe it. This is our eighth webinar that we've done for the year, and these typically follow our annual summit that we have in March. And keep your eyes peeled. We'll be launching the date of the Elevate Summit just after the new year. I'm Corinne Oki. If you've joined us before, you've heard from me. I'm the VP of Community and Engagement here at Breezeway, and I'm going to be moderating today because we've got two incredible ladies joining me who are going to be able to share and impart a lot of knowledge on with you guys. So without further ado, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves? And as folks are doing this, I do just want to note, I've taken away the slides, so you're just going to see our faces on here. So don't worry, you didn't lose visibility into anything. We're just having a panel discussion here. So, all right, who wants to go first? Sarah's on mute. So Jessica, you want to go?
Okay. Hi, I am Jessica Deuce. I own J-Deuce Design and Vacation Rental Designers. And Vacation Rental Designers is a collective of designers across the country. We have 70 designers that help with vacation rental, short-term rental designing. And we're really proud of that. They understand ROI and what the difference is for good design with short-term rentals. And I also am the founder of the Vacation Rental Design Summit, and that is an annual event where owners, property managers, and designers come together and learn about the power of design and brands and products to help you with your ROI for your short-term rentals.
I love it.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Weaver. I am a real estate investor, coach, author, speaker, and the owner of Aria Design Services. We help real estate investors like you furnish and launch your next furnished rental all over the country. And I really have a heart for out-of-state investors. So if anyone here is investing long distance, I see you, I understand you. I have been fully nomadic for 5 years and 11 months. I'm about to celebrate 6 years of nomading. So I have been furnishing, analyzing, managing my properties in the Midwest from all over the world. And so definitely here to answer any questions related to how the heck do I do this from afar? And more importantly, how can you do it as well?
Well, listen, and both Jessica and Sarah are being very modest. These are two powerhouse women, and we're gonna have them share a little bit more about how, in addition to design, they spend their time towards the end. But guys, I want to, we've got a lot of folks who are here with us today, but I'd love to hear from you the benefit that you or your clients see from designing in rentals, and how it how it works. Broad question, I know.
I love this topic. Sarah, I think you and I would agree on this. Like, we understand the power of design for a more profitable rental. And we both started a while ago in this. For me, it was in 2015. And we were just screaming to the, whoever would listen, like, I promise you, if good design will help you be more profitable. And finally, in 23 and 24, AirDNA did a 1-year-long research study and actually proved that good design will yield you up to 30 to 40% in a higher return on your investment, a higher rental rate by good professional design. So we actually have statistics now for what we have learned over the years of why you need good design. You really can charge a higher rate. You have more longevity with your furnishings if you do it right. You stand out amongst your competition. I mean, across the board, there is a value, which AirDNA's quote is hiring an interior designer can lead to higher occupancy rates and increased revenue, justifying the investment across the board. That's them, not us saying that. So, right?
Yeah, Jessica, I really love the word justify because I've been thinking a lot about that as a recovering frugal gal. I can afford things, but can I justify it? And so what I love is that when we design our clients' units really well, the end user, the guest or the potential guest can justify the higher rate because they're booking a beautiful place. And I find as an Airbnb user, short-term and mid-term rental guest myself, when I'm staying at a beautifully decorated place, it also means that I'm dealing with a professional host. If a unit is just thrown together and then thrown on as a listing, I can kind of expect a worse experience because when something goes wrong, they don't have the infrastructure or the people in place to get it fixed or to answer my questions or take care of my needs. And so great design not only is going to justify that higher rate, but I think it also is a message to the end user that they are going to experience a better experience in your home.
Yeah, I think those both of those, that makes so much sense. And I also think, it, not only is it going to give a better experience, but it's also just going to, increase the likelihood of those repeat bookings, increase the likelihood that someone goes home and says, you're never going to guess where I stayed and how well furnished it was and how comfortable this was or how everything just flowed, right? Those great experiences are what lead to the repeat guests, the word of mouth, all of that. I do want to launch a quick poll here for everybody. Which now that I'm gonna stop this launch. I'm gonna re-add it because I don't think that I have added it correctly. So have you considered the poll is gonna be, have you considered how design can impact your business? And so I'm redoing it and I'm gonna then relaunch it because apparently I did not do a great job here. But all right, so now we're gonna launch it. And oh my God, guys. Okay, we're gonna go on to the next question while I get this ready. What considerations should someone who's on the call consider before they bring on a designer, right? Or what are the things they need to think about in advance of engaging with one of you guys in your services?
You want to go first, Sarah?
Yeah, I think that they need to be really clear on their numbers. I'm a huge advocate of making sure that who you think your end user is makes sense. And then are they willing to pay what you think they're going to pay? And so I often see when real estate investors buy a bad deal, which I think is like everyone's greatest fear, it's because they just didn't slow down and really realistically run the numbers. And so that could be overestimating occupancy, overestimating nightly rate, and then more importantly, underestimating things like renovation, timeline, and then, of course, design costs with either our fees tied in, or if you are going to go at it alone, especially long distance, are you being realistic about your flight, feeding you and the people that are going to help you install, the cost of having someone help you install, and all of that upfront costs sometimes get underestimated. And I think that is my like biggest, if I could send you guys home with one message, it would be get really good at analyzing deals. And that's analyzing the whole thing from start to finish.
I love that, Sarah. We are so on the same page. When we have a new client, we do what's called an avatar research. And so we have a program where it looks at all of your competition over 2 years. It looks at reviews, positive and negative, what your competition is charging, what your competition looks like, events in the area, and how the what am I trying to say? How many people book during those different events. And we take all of that data and create your ideal guest and what that guest experience would look like and help determine how much money would be reasonable to spend to elevate that experience for your new potential avatar guests. And that has really paid off. So to Sarah's point, if that's something that you want to do and maybe you're not ready to hire a professional for that data, you really can use your online resources and even Chat GPT to help you get some of those statistics. you need that data to tell you how much you're going to spend.
Yeah, and I think like it is about how much you spend, but then it's also right about like, what is that value? What's that ROI? So can we talk a little bit about the ROI piece of it as people start, Sarah, you talked about overestimating what it's going to mean and how this is going to influence, any tips for folks thinking about like what the ROI could be?
Yeah, so I come at it from an interesting angle. For those of you that don't know, I focus on midterm rentals. I wrote the book 30 Day Stay, Mastering the Medium Term Rental Strategy, published by Bigger Pockets. And so my avatar as an investor, my personal units, these are travel medical professionals. And so I'm decorating my units not only to attract them, but also to keep them in my unit. So in 2023, 47% of my travel nurses extended from 3 months to 6 months. If the unit is not decorated beautifully and more importantly in a livable manner, meaning the couch is something that you actually want to sit on after a 12-hour shift. The dining room table is one that you actually want to sit at, again, after a 12-hour shift. Paying attention to the simple things that I think a lot of investors overlook, like a sound machine and blackout curtains and great bedding and a great bed. These are things that keep your unit full. And then, of course, the way that you design it and photograph it is going to first attract them. I think that that becomes even more important as you're focusing on these midterm rental clients. I'd love to hear from Jessica because I know, Jessica, you really focus on short-term rentals. What do you have to say?
For return on investment items, like what we consider valuable. Yeah, because I see a question in the chat, and it's always the first one we're asked, like, how do you do this on a budget? I say to people, would you stay in your own rental? If what you're putting in there, is that something that you would want to experience as a guest? So your return on investment is really wrapped into one word, and that's experience. So yes, you should have great bedding. Yes, you should have great, beautiful things, but you're assuming that that means you're spending top dollar. It's really about where you're spending the money. So you just mentioned a good place to sit, your bedding, all of those things. You can make beautiful touches on a budget. Little things like when we scan a potential client's images portfolio, I'll see this over and over again. It'll say that they sleep 8 and you'll have a table for 4. You'll say that you have 8 place settings, but your house rents for 12. All of that is experience. So the return on investment is also another way to look at it is having a new neutral eye, somebody that comes in, you see it, you've created your rental, you're proud of it. We get that, but you need to have somebody neutral coming in and looking at it and saying, if we spend more here, then you're going to make a difference here because you don't see what we see and you're not experiencing it like your guests. So to your point, return on investment is a great night's sleep, a great place to sit, and eye candy and your photos. That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Well, so yeah, because so often you see, and this doesn't happen as much today as it did maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, but the dimly lit, the person in the video, the person in the mirror, right? The poor angles, or the big, what is that, like a fish, the fish lens, right? That makes the room look a lot larger than it is. I think like the photos do make a difference, but I think that all sort of falls back to the work that's done and the sort of the foundation that is set. Guys, I did get the poll up, so let's try this again. It says that it is already launched. All right, we're not doing a poll. That's it. It's just not meant to be today. Fail on my part, but I do think you guys you talked about like the guest experience and the impact that design can have on that, and I think yeah, Jessica, you mentioned like tips for folks on a budget. It's one of the questions that we see in here, but also like you guys have named some of these bedding, place settings, etc., but are there specific design elements that you find consistently have a positive impact on satisfaction and repeat bookings that if you were naming off a handful?
Sure. You want me to go, Sarah?
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to add before I say this is, and we tell this to our clients, is When you're in a saturated market and let's say your zip code, everybody has the same amenities in the area. Maybe on your street, everybody has the same view, all of the same, right? Literally, the only tool in your toolbox at that point is design to make you stand out. So with that, the way we focus on different opportunities in your property is maybe you don't have a huge space, maybe you do, it doesn't matter, but you're going to focus on experiential photos. So the old school way, like you said, was the fish lens and shooting your properties like real estate. But now it is very tight vignettes. It's a piece of the bed, a piece of the nightstand, a piece of the lamp, a hint of the art, something saying, I want to be cozy right here. A chair styled, a book open, a light on. In design photography, if we're shooting for a magazine, we never have lights on. We never do really tight shots of just a chair and a table like that, the way I'm describing. This is completely different in short-term rental listings. We want you to actually sit there and picture yourself reading. There could be a cup of coffee sitting on that little table next to the chair with the throw, with the book. That's how it's being done differently now for styled photos. Does that help?
I echo what Jessica
Create,
said.
yeah, creating experiential images for your listing.
Yeah, and I think that what I see often is investors are investing in some of these amenities, like a hot tub or a barrel sauna, and then their photo of it, for lack of better words, it sucks. Like that doesn't look like a hot tub that I want to hang out in. That doesn't look like a barrel sauna that I can comfortably walk to. It's like 70 feet from the house. And like I'm not walking there in, Michigan winter. And
Yeah.
so I think you have to think beyond just, I get the question all the time, like, how do I know the ROI of a hot tub? And I'm like, yeah, but I feel like you still miss the mark if you don't photograph it really well. And it has to be inviting. Same with outdoor pools. There's leaves in it. There's not like sexy floaty, and the stage is not set. And I think that what happens with a lot of investors, especially any of us that are in real estate, we have either an eye for design or we can see the vision. Our ideal avatar client does not see a vision, guys. They are only seeing what you're showing them. And if you're showing them like a lame photo of something that might actually be beautiful, you miss the mark.
Well, I think it's funny. I'm looking at some of the questions that come in here, and one of these says, like, I try to work with my owners to have nicer items, right? But they're always saying, like, well, I don't want the guests to trash it, right? So um there are certain things I think that you guys as design professionals just know, right? We're gonna have to replace this every X year, right? This is not gonna last through more than Y bookings. So are there I guess I don't want to say there are particular areas, but I think we could take this a couple of different ways. Like, I guess firstly, how do you combat that, right? How do you combat that conversation with an owner or a property manager who's saying, yeah, but they're going to ruin it, so why am I going to do that? We hear all the time, like, I have great glasses and then they go walking, or I put robes in my property and they go walking, right? How do you sort of have that conversation?
Well, I'm sure Sarah will have thoughts on this. And Sarah and I could talk about this together all day long. I love it. But,
Jessica, you send me your troubled clients and I'll send you mine, and we'll set them straight for each other.
I love it. I love it.
Good cop, bad cop.
There's so many ways to answer that. One is like, if you're buying the $100 painted white veneer coffee table from Wayfair, you're right. You got a one year life with that. But if you purchase right and you don't do a white paint chip type of veneer coffee table from Wayfair, and go maybe with a wood or a harder edge, something with more longevity that, yes, you've paid more money for, but it's going to last you 3 times longer. That's a good way to think about how to spend your money. If you're elevating the pieces in your rental, you should, in theory, then should be elevating the price of your nightly rental, which in turn should get you a better guest. The other part that I wanted to add to that, which now has gone from my head because I got really passionate about the
I'll hop in. I'd love to hear from
Thank you.
Jason. I'd love to hear from you, Jason, who asked that question. Can you give us an example of something that you're trying to convince your client to purchase? I'd love to hear that. And then I'll chime in. And I think you have to ask yourself, let's say that I am the owner, okay? So you have to ask yourself, am I running a business or am I looking at this personally? Because I often have investors who are turning their primary homes into short-term rentals and then they're moving out and doing it again. And what happens is you get like emotionally attached to items. And so you have to ask yourself, like, is this a business decision or am I making an emotional decision? And usually, Jason, when I say that, it helps the client realize, oh, yeah, you're right. I'm making an emotional decision about something that should be a business decision. And then as far as spending money on, or oh, as far as Corinne, how you asked the question about like robes or glassware being taken away, that's not a nice item problem. That's a cleaner like SOP problem. And so you should have a system in place where your cleaner is doing an inventory so that sure, if a robe goes missing, that's fine. I'm going to charge the guest for it. And I'm going to overcharge the guest for it. And so I'm not losing sleep over things that are going missing as long as I have the system and the cleaner in place to handle that during turnover. And that's part of being a really good owner.
Oh, I love
Funnily
that.
enough, go ahead, Jessica.
I love that. Sarah, we had a problem with things walking away at one of our properties. So we actually created these fake little stickers and we put them on the bottom of all the tchotchke, inside the books, everything. And they look like little codes and they meant zero, nothing. We made it up. And in the welcome invite to the guests, it said, don't worry if something accidentally falls in your bag when you leave. We have a system. We're immediately notified if something goes missing. You'll notice the codes on the pieces. I swear to you, theft was immediately gone.
Oh, and you're telling me that thieves are reading your book
I
in detail?
swear to God that happened. We had cute copy
I
and we,
thought about being a klepto, but I read Jessica's guest book and I changed my mind.
I swear.
That is amazing. Well, I do think it's, sometimes you listen,
Kleptos read.
if you kleptos read, quote of the webinar. I think like there are probably scenarios, and I've experienced this, right? We stayed in and it was a friend's company, and they had these beautiful everyone loved them branded wine glasses. And at the end of the day, everyone's like, are we allowed to take these, or like are these ours? And sometimes, right, if you don't do the right like communication with your guests, then they don't necessarily know that it's not for them to take, right? And I actually messaged and I said, hey, can I take these? But if I would have read your guidebook and I would have seen that it had a QR code, I would not have taken it. Now, in my defense, I'm not a klepto. It actually was a guest gift. And they said, they you just beat us to it. Because I asked on like the second day, they were said it's part of our like, our departure message, like make sure you take the branded wine glass that we left for you in your room, etc. So I do think not people sometimes just are confused. They're just sometimes confused.
We'll
They're
go
not
with that. We'll go
not
with
all purposeful kleptos, though there are some out there. Are there any okay, so we talked a little bit about creating visually appealing spaces and taking the photographs that sort of fall with that. And then we also talked about practicality and buying the right furniture and having the right items in the home. But how do you strike that balance between creating those visually appealing spaces and ensuring they're practical for your guests?
Well, along that same line of messaging, we actually tell our owners that new photos should be done every 3 years minimum. So that's another way of looking at, if you're worried about the wear and tear and you don't want to invest in some other pieces, you're still going to need new photos to just be interesting and stop the scroll, because people do come to the same areas and want to look for something different. So that's another way of thinking about how you're going to invest in those pieces. If you're locked into that $100 Wayfair coffee table, just know that you're going to change it out in 2 to 3 years when you get all new photos. So that would be something else, another way to look at that for your budget.
Yeah, that's super helpful. I just wanted to make note. Thank you, Jason, for answering our question. He says in the chat, I'm a local realtor also, and as you said, we have an eye for design. I noticed that owners will purchase the Wayfair furniture or the lower end furniture. I try to tell the owners that having nicer furniture will target the guests that won't ruin their furniture. So really, it varies from dressers to credenza to bedding to dining room chairs. And so I just wanted to elaborate on this. First of all, Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to write that. I think it's so important for everyone here to understand what we're seeing as real estate agents and designers in the space. And then also, I tell people you're going to spend the money either way. Either you're going to replace this, dresser or nightstand at some point, or you are going to invest the money now and it's going to last you longer. And so I always try to tell investors, unfortunately, the money's coming from somewhere. And so let's just put it in a really good place. Also, I wanted to note that Michael asked a great question about how asked Jessica to expand on how you use ChatGPT to get data. And then I threw some of my prompts that I have saved in the chat if you guys want to grab those. But Jessica, will you talk a little bit more about how you're using ChatGPT to do your research?
Well, that is my example for you to do. We actually had a bot created to help us look for so we have a whole system. When somebody signs on with us, our bot helps us scan through thousands of bits of information. So that's something completely different. But for you to do, and you said you put your prompts in the chat, for you can go onto ChatGPT and literally give the zip code, what you're asking for exactly into ChatGPT, and it will tell you. So I don't have a magic pill for you because we have a bot for it, but if you experience or if you experiment with ChatGPT, you can get a lot of amazing data. And then the other thing we started doing this before we created our bot, is we would contact the local tourism bureau, and they will send you a ton of stats that you would not realize that they have. It's amazing. So we do a deep dive for every zip code that we work in. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that's great.
I saw a question about
a ton of answered questions in here. So if you're
Oh,
on the
yeah.
call, head over to answered. We've typed in some answers for some of them.
For sure. Yeah. And we'll definitely go through these. I know there's questions around budget and all that good stuff. So we'll try to, do our best to get through as many of these as we can. I think that we've talked a little bit, and I'm curious to get your takes on it. Like, if you were to provide the audience with a list of, let's say, 5 things, right? What are design features or furnishings, right, outside of like the quality of the item, that you would consider essential in every rental, right, that people are thinking about?
Well, this ties into one question that I really want to answer, and it is gray towels versus white towels. And if for your investment, I can't tell you enough how strongly I feel about white towels, not gray. Gray fades not in an equal way. It will look dirty the second you start using it. I've had housekeepers tell me before that they want gray, and I fight it, and there's no way. And there is a reason why hotels and motels across the world use white towels, because they did a research study in the late 40s, sponsored by the government, our tax dollars, about how do you define cleanliness in establishments like this? And they found that white was associated with cleanliness. And that's why hotels and motels all over the world only use white, because your guests will immediately assume it is cleaner. So don't do colored towels. So to me, that is a big one for amenities that you want to look at. Good towels that are white, quality sheets, that's a big deal. Good mattresses. There are so many platforms out there that can help you find items that are discounted that you can buy that are still great quality. They just have a different label. I'm not trying to talk anybody into going anywhere, but I buy mattresses through Host GPO, and they are a very top brand mattress that just has a different private label on it. So things like that. I don't know. I could keep going and going. Does that help?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think any places, Host GPO is a great one. There's somebody else who mentioned they buy kitchen items from In Haven, right? That's another great a great company where you can get things. Sarah, you mentioned a company, but was it one of those that you have used in the past in our previous conversation, or am I making that
Oh,
up?
yeah, we were talking about kind of budget designers in that call.
Yeah.
But I want to echo Jessica. I'm also using Host GPO to buy my mattresses as well. And I think you really hit it on the head is, do you want to stay in your own unit? And so when you're cooking a full meal, which I don't cook, so this is something I always have to ask a friend, like, do you have all of the items in that unit for someone to cook a meal? Because oftentimes when families, especially, are coming to stay at your larger homes, they're there to gather. They're there to, share meals together. And that's going to involve at least some cooking or definitely like serveware. And so I think making sure that your home is actually enjoyable and livable is really important. As an out of state investor, it doesn't necessarily need to be you going to the property, but make sure that you do send someone to essentially audit the stay to check for things that you may have missed, especially if you're doing this remotely.
Yeah, and I think being in the unit or sending somebody to be in the unit is there's something that no matter how well you plan, you just don't know until you're trying to do it. And to Sarah's point, right, you've got to, use it as a reward for your housekeeper, use it as an award for somebody on your team, a reward for someone on your team, to get to like bring their family in for a night, or whatever it takes in order to like find the people who can give you the real information, as a guest, that's really going to help drive your success. And I think that when you stay with other hosts, it's funny. I think so often people are like, well, I don't know if I should give this feedback, but if it was my unit, I would do this, right? Most of the time, constructive feedback is welcome from everyone. So, it would have been really nice if we'd had this. It didn't impact our stay not to have it, but we were thinking about this piece of it.
I will gladly come and stay in your units, you guys, and give you honest feedback. So, especially if it's somewhere beautiful.
She's not looking to go to Michigan right
No,
now.
no, that's not that. I didn't. Snowshoeing's nice.
Snowshoeing's nice. What about, we did have the question in here around doing things on a budget. And so are there, we talked about Jessica, you talked about quality sheets, really good mattresses, nice linens, and towels. But are there particular areas within a property where budget friendly design, pieces or updates are okay, right? Like, where would you tell people not to spend the money?
Well, this ties into a question from Jason. Thank you, Jason. You have a great question about, we have a lot of owners who have the coastal comforters and some of them are atrocious. We are in a coastal town, but do you think guests really care about the starfish comforter? No, they don't care about the starfish comforter. They just you do not need a themey rental. That is
Preach,
so
Jessica, preach.
Don't do it. And that is a way to save money. So get neutral bedding, have an interesting throw pillow or bed scarf on there, but no more starfish comforters, none of that themey stuff. And this is one of those little tips, like buy your bedding in bulk in neutrals, but it's better quality, and mix and match it. One of the owners we work with, they switched everything to triple sheeting. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to go flat sheet, then insert, then flat sheet like in a hotel. They saved money by treating their fitted sheet like a flat sheet, like a hotel does. So now they're just buying flat sheets. So it's still a tucked in flat, which would be your typical fitted sheet, and then your flat sheet, and then they put a coverlet, and then or a blanket, then they have a coverlet. But just now buying flat sheets in bulk saved them a ton of money. And then they switched to standard pillows on every bed, 3 on a king, 2 on a queen. And now they're buying in bulk standard pillowcases, standard pillows, and that saved them a lot of money, and they elevated the quality of the bedding. So it's beyond just thinking about the pretty little touches. And then we tell people, spend money on things that you're never really going to have to replace, like a beautiful lighting piece or a great piece of art, or use local artists and ask them if they want to be in your rental and get exposure and be hung on the wall, but you're not paying for that art. And then the things that you know are going to get worn hard by your guests, those are the things you're going to be more cost effective with.
Sarah, I want to get your opinion on this too, but I'm seeing in here, we had one more question around artwork and the opinion of What should that look like? So I love the idea of engaging a local artist and bringing that in and saying, hey, let's get that exposure. Let's make more people aware of you. But opinion on colorful, interesting art versus like basic. This is not my quotes. This is the audience members' quotes, but basic art. What's the opinion
Well,
there?
nobody wants to rent a place that looks like their neighbors or a Pottery Barn catalog or boring. They're looking for interesting. So I guess I'm not quite sure how to answer that, but to me, if I had a neutral, safe, comfy, inviting chair, I would want a pop of art with it because that's what's going to stand out in a photo. So to me, there is no basic art. Don't, unless you have that biophilic natural vibe you're going for, and it's real earthy and the art is simplistic, that overall look will photograph beautifully together. But if you have interesting pieces and then a basic boring piece of art, you've lost the whole shot.
And I think one really good way to save money, but still have great art that's not in everybody else's rental. There's nothing wrong with buying things at Target, but every time I see that, I'm like, yep, I've bought that before. I've seen that. And so is print on demand. And so you can get some really great things printed from online, from actual artists. Contact your local artists. That's something that I really like to do in the cities that I'm in, is figure out who are the makers in that place that want their art displayed, and might be able to even give it to you at cost. And so that's something that I'm doing inside of my properties. And then you always have Etsy and any other online stores. There was a question in here about rugs, and Jessica, I'd love your opinion on this. How do you feel about rugs versus like keeping, hardwood floors exposed? What do you do to keep the rugs clean? I'd love to hear more about that.
I'm a huge fan of rugs. I personally want to get out of bed and have my feet touch something soft and comfy. That's part of the experience. I use in our collective, one of our sponsors is Unique Loom, and we also have Phasey. Great rugs. And there's a misnomer, and I used to do this. I used to buy outdoor rugs and put them inside because they have a propylene blend and they're easy to clean, but they're really not that comfy nice. And so the market has changed and you can get beautiful wool rugs at an amazing cost and they clean beautifully. They're a one-time purchase now for us for rentals. These beautiful wool, don't be afraid of wool blend rugs that clean beautifully. They can even be hosed off. I wouldn't really recommend that regularly, but anyway, this is not going to be on your list of having to replace every year or two if you buy a better rug. So
I
yes,
love
I'm
that.
team
What was
rug.
this? You said Unique Loom, and what was the other one?
Phasey.
Okay.
And guys, I know that there's some issue with not being able to see some of these. I think it's some of the responses. So we'll make sure that we get those responses that are in that have been shared, and make sure those are shared with you when we do the recap message.
Yep, I didn't realize that either. I do want to answer some of these then, just if that's okay.
Sorry.
So we have a couple about travel nurses. And so one is saying, basically asking, do travel nurses want rent by the room or shared spaces? I'm finding that they're not. And so even for my 2-bedroom, 1-bath units, I'm getting one individual nurse renting those 2-bedroom units. It's why I personally really like my 1-bedroom, 1-bath units for travel medical professionals. But that definitely doesn't mean that 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and larger cannot be a midterm rental. I just don't think your target audience is travel medical professionals. It's probably displaced insurance policy holders or something of the like. And then the other question was about timeline and stay, because someone has something with a HOA that doesn't allow anything less than 6 months. Most travel medical professionals have a 13-week contract. And so that's going to be the most common stay length.
Awesome. I know we still have some more questions. I do want to touch on something, a couple of things, and then I want to ask another question here. But Sarah, you mentioned, right, the issues with things walking away and SOPs and making sure that you can attribute when something is used. I think most of the people on this call are, but if you're not using Breezeway, that's going to be a great tool to help you do that. So I do have to give one shameless plug while we're here today. And I think Jessica, you mentioned the white towels, the white, the white neutral linens. The very first thing I can tell you as a guest, and maybe I have been around this business for too long, but the very first thing I do when I walk into a property that has that coastal comforter, like Jason mentioned, is it's coming off the bed and I'm not touching it the rest of my stay, right? Because I know enough about what happens in our industry to know that I might not be the first person seeing that bedding. So while we have great intentions, white sheets are allowing you to, they're going to be what allow you to use bleach. They're going to be what allow you to be most effective in the actual operational piece of it. So not only does this create this really beautiful design space and visually appealing space for guests, but it's also going to make it easier for your team to actually execute on those turnovers. And I do think, I think Jessica, you also mentioned triple sheeting and standardization across properties. A lot of companies are making that investment on their own to say, these are the requirements that are across our entire portfolio of homes. So they're getting rid of those comforters that were, it was my grandma's favorite comforter or quilt, right, 10 years ago. And I want to keep it in my property for nostalgia. Well, not only because that probably will be the thing that gets ruined, but also because it's really hard to clean. So I do think that, COVID brought about a lot of change when it came to sort of like bedding and linen and some of the basic like furnishing pieces. But I think as we continue as an industry to see more of a design influence, we're seeing that like standardization still have personality, still have appeal, still make guests feel like they're entering this incredible space for the very first time. And I do want to touch in because we are big fans of safety here at Breezeway. Jessica, I met on a panel with Justin Ford. Sarah has heard Justin speak, and so I'm curious because I have to ask, how do you factor in guest safety with your design aesthetic?
Oh yeah, safety can be sexy. Safety can be pretty.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
She's been on a panel with Justin. Safety is sexy.
We did a property where there was an unusual step and there's a company that creates artwork with a handle on it. So it looks like it's art with the dimension, but it's actually your grip to go up the stairs. You can get fire extinguishers that are themed and beautiful and hung on the wall. We just hung one in a rental and it looks like it's part of a cigar bar, but it's the fire extinguisher and it has a cute little sign. For the pools, we have a property that there's a little bracelet that whoever is going to be the lifeguard at the time has this cute little bracelet they wear. And then there's this little jar that they put it in there and it becomes this little challenge for the guests of who's going to wear the bracelet for pool safety and a sign, like just make it fun and interesting.
When I saw that artwork with the handrail, when you initially shared that, I was blown away. And I do think things that you aren't likely to come across without someone like one of the two of you to guide you in that right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And just thinking about all of the things that could go wrong. So making sure that you're securing things like the oven. I think a lot of times people are buying properties that already exist. And so there's already an oven there. And so did you check that, that tip mechanism is installed? I think all of those things really, really matter. And I mean, how devastated would any of us be if our guests, had an accident happen, especially something that's preventable? So I think working with someone like Breezeway is so important because I don't know about you guys, but I got about 1,000 things going on, especially when I'm onboarding a new property. And so make sure that you're consulting with the experts that already have things like checklists so that you don't miss anything.
Well, and I think that brings up a good point, right? Like if this is not a planted question, but if someone on the call wanted to enlist one of your services or that of someone, with your expertise, how do you recommend they find a designer if they don't have one on their staff or on their team? Any tips or advice?
Yeah, just take Jessica's email. Guys, don't do any research.
I think that's great advice. We have designers all across the country we can connect you with. And Heather is, or sorry, Sarah is amazing. You have her as a resource. I learned listening to Sarah. Sarah and I talked about this the other day. Do not be afraid to work with a designer. It doesn't mean that you're going to spend a gazillion dollars. There are designers for every price point. If you may need just help with the vision or some advice or mood boards, you can have them install it. You can install it yourself. There are so many ways to do it. And I think, Sarah, you said this is any design help is better than no design help because it'll get you on the right path, right?
And I think that if I'm doing my job, because we focus a lot on the midterm rental space, if I'm doing my job, I'm saving you our fee. And so by the time you fly out, you take off work, you find childcare, you fly to your property, you're buying all of the things, you're doing the installation. I'm more than like saving you headache. I'm usually also saving you our fee through design discounts, making good choices, making these choices of items that are going to last, like Jessica's pointed out. And so, especially anyone on the call that's actually furnished your own property, like ask yourself, do you really want to do it again? I feel like it's like renovating. Anytime I like renovate a property, I'm like, I'm never doing this again. But then enough time goes by and you're like, you start romanticizing it. You're like, that was so fun. No, there's nothing fun about putting bed frames together and carrying in boxes. So hire Jessica and I to do it for you.
Exactly. When I have seen Sarah's Instagrams and I've seen all of the hard work that goes into furnishing those units. So I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Heck, I didn't want to move into my own property again. So uh,
We do
Betsy,
have, sorry, we do have one question.
yeah.
Do Jessica, will you work in Hawaii? Because I will.
I was just answering that. We actually have a designer that is based out of Alaska and travels to Hawaii and does a lot of design work. But of course, if you would like me to come to Hawaii, I'm available.
Yeah, I mean, I don't, my designer won't agree with this, but I would discount my fee to go to Hawaii.
Oh man, you heard it here first, guys. We do have some other questions and we have about 10 minutes. So I want to go through some of those, but Betsy, Betsy concurs with what you guys have said a lot, right? The nicer you make your home, the more people respect it and continue to become repeat guests. There is oh, this is about just confirmation around ChatGPT. Some questions on thoughts on TVs in bedrooms. This is for wildlife nature kind of property is what this person's asking about. TVs in bedrooms.
Fan. I put when I can, I put art frame TVs in rooms. So it looks like a piece of art, but I am that guest that wants to watch TV at night and have my Netflix pop up. But the several of the PMs I work for are all getting rid of TVs in bedrooms.
Yeah, I'm opposite. I'm team no TV. And so I think it's one way to save money. I think again, you just have to think about your end user. Who is going to be booking these places and what type of stay are they going to have? And hopefully you know your avatar guest well enough to know, are they going to be like Jessica and they're going to want a TV, or are they going to be me living in a one bedroom unit? I don't need a TV in my bedroom. There's a TV in the living room. And so I think that's really is a personal decision, but it is one way to save a little bit of money. Yet TVs are so inexpensive these days that you can definitely do that. Jessica, I'd love your opinion about this because this is something my designer and I fight on. What about plants? How do you feel about fake plants, real plants? Tell me about your thoughts on plants.
So in the right spot, if you have a good housekeeping crew that will feed the plants as needed. I love to have some real plants in the kitchen in particular. And we played around with this and we did a couple little herb plants and they're so cheap. So if one starts to die or one guest wiped out all your oregano, you can get another one at the grocery store. But the feedback we got by having that little touch was extraordinary. So in the right spot, I'm pro live plant, but if it's going to make your housekeeping crazy, then no.
Yeah, I think that goes back to the SOPs, Sarah, that you mentioned, right? You have to make sure if you're going to have those plants that they're alive when the guest checks in. I was going to comment on one of the things, and of course now I totally forgot, and I was like, this is a really good point. There was also a question around, you know, trying to get upgrades and updates to properties, right? So this is from a property manager. How do you persuade an owner who continually receives bookings that updates to their properties are necessary? Is there particular data that you use? And before I turn it over to you guys, what I will say is, prior to joining Breezeway about 7.5 years ago, I worked for FlipKey and TripAdvisor, and we brought guest reviews into the space. And I heard so frequently, I've been telling this owner that they need to replace insert mattress, couch, whatever, for months or years, and they never listen to me. Utilizing review data and having it come from the words of your guests is going to be one way to get the owner on board, because any reviews that mention those things that you've also been mentioning will probably get more attention than you. But I'll turn it over, and I remembered my thing, so I'm just going to make a note so I don't forget. But I'm going to turn that over to Jessica and Sarah. What do you guys think about advice to present to an owner?
Well, I can tell you the very first project I was on, the reverse of that, the owner, or really the PM, was like, you are booking every night, so why do you need to make any improvements? We're renting. Well, you know what? Yeah, you're renting, but you could be renting for more with a better guest. So the number of nights you're booked does not equal the greatest amount of pay that you're getting. So
Yes.
once they took that leap of faith and let us do improvements, they doubled their rates, they have a better guest. So you're getting what you pay for. So if you're not going to listen to the reviews of your guest experience, first of all, you're going to be late to the party eventually in a saturated market. And if all your competition is improving and you're not, then you're just going to get a lower quality guest. If you're willing to make those improvements, and this is exactly what I would say to your owner, then you're going to make more money, hopefully have less nights at a higher yield, which would actually be better, and have a better guest.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense. There's a question, the follow-up question from that same person is, we talked about how they could find you guys, and we're going to give everybody their contact information. But is there design advice that property managers, maybe not with the exact, not with the exact eye that one of you or somebody on your team would have, but any advice that managers could give to their homeowners as it pertains to design, if they don't have the budget or they're not willing to hire a designer outside of what you've already shared?
Yeah, I think one thing that people don't realize is that you can pay people just for their time. And so it's worth having a consultation with someone like Jessica or I if we offer it. You're going to get that money back. Like I said, I cannot stress enough. You're going to spend the money somewhere. And so you might as well spend it. I call it taking the elevator to the penthouse. So like have a one-on-one consultation, have someone look at your listing photos, give you advice. I'll audit listings and say, if I was on a budget, I would spend this, but here's where I would spend a little bit more money. And I think that just paying for people's time has been one of the best things that I've done as a businesswoman and an investor over the last decade. And that's really the quickest way to do it on the smallest budget. But again, for anyone that's teetering on using somebody's services, just the amount of stress and time that us designers can save you is immeasurable, because just, adding things to cart and ordering them and coordinating deliveries, I've estimated that takes upwards of 72 to 80 hours. And so I'm sure a lot of you on the call, you already have JOBs, you already have jobs and demanding lives. And so is that really something that you want to take on every time you acquire a new property?
Jessica, anything you want to add on that?
I can tell you the last two people I answered a question to, I was in the middle of answering you and I hit send and it went off. So I'm sorry I didn't finish my answer. One of them was my favorite vendors on Etsy and Canva. Canva, you're going to create your own. You were asking about how to create unique safety things. Canva, you create your own completely. So do that. Etsy, I can't remember our vendors we use. And then the other one was about how I do drink lifestyle shots. And we use ginger ale with fruit in it or cranberry. And that implies whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic. And that's what we use in our lifestyle shots for drinks. So I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. I would say two things as well, which is, um, we have a lot of signs that um that we talk about, particularly around safety. And I know that In Haven has also started manufacturing some of those signs, and you can buy some of the signs from them. They may not be quite as I don't know exactly what they look like, but I know they've done that. I also know that water watchers, Jessica talked about the wrists and bracelets. Some of the local governments will offer, if you Google like water watchers programs, they'll offer like the language that you want to have on there. Water watchers is just, hey, I'm responsible for watching the pool and making sure everyone's safe. um and then whether it's a bracelet, whether it's a lanyard, whatever that is in there. But we are running out of time, but I want to touch on one thing, which I remembered what I wanted to say, and it ties in, Sarah, to something that you talked about, which is and you both talked about, throughout this call, which is understanding your ideal guest, understanding the traveler, the avatar. And I would encourage anyone on this call to think about that and bucket your guest, your traveler, into a couple different segments. And that's not only going to help you think about like, okay, this home is really geared towards adults only, or this is a family friendly home, or this house is great for that. It's going to help your team make the right recommendations to guests. And if you start to look at it in that capacity, there's two other things that I think are really important, which is one, you can craft a guest journey through communication that applies to them and makes them feel like you're speaking directly to them. It also is a great option for like guest gifts and welcome gifts, right? So you're providing the right type of gift that feels really personalized. It's still a one to many type scenario, but it feels personalized to that guest. And that was something that, we've talked about a lot as we think about like guest journey and guest communication, but now applying it to design and how you attract those guests. And that personalization, it really impacts the experience. So we've had a lot of really great things to talk through. I do want to give both Sarah and Jessica a moment to kind of talk a little bit more about the programs and their offerings and what they do before we wrap up here. So Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit more around like what you do outside of what we've talked about today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, thank you guys for being such an active audience. Like, this is so fun that there's been so many good questions. I love working with investors who want to grow their portfolio, whether that's someone who has no units and they want to get to 7 or 8 units this year. One of my students, Paul, did exactly that. Or maybe you own a few properties, but you haven't gone out of state yet. My mentorship program is a year-long program where we work hand in hand, and I'm giving you all of these SOPs and checklists. I'm even introducing you to the lender and to the agent. I've even given deals to my people in my program. And so my program is focused on any type of real estate investing. I wouldn't say that we're great for someone who's looking to only do creative financing or wholesaling. We really focus on people that are ready to pull the trigger on buying something in the next 90 days. So if that's you and you're feeling stuck and you're like, I know I'm ready, I know that I want to buy something, but I'm scared, I would love to help you inside of my coaching program.
Amazing. And I put up here Sarah and Jessica's contact information. And I think I found the right one, the AirDNA research, Jessica, that you talked about at the very top of the call. There was a question about that. So here's a
Thank
QR
you.
code if you get that. But Jessica, what else? Tell us what else you're doing besides all of this fun stuff.
Well, I can tell you, if I'm going to invest in a property, I'm going to call Sarah because she's amazing. Um, I have one property, so when I'm ready to take that leap, Sarah, you're my call.
Excellent, excellent, excellent.
But if you're looking for design help, feel free to reach out to me. I would love to connect you with a designer, myself. We have an amazing network of designers that's growing fast. And what makes us special is that there's amazing design out there, but a designer that understands return on investment, the right products, the right placement, the right way to schedule in between your bookings of how to do a profitable rental for you through the lens of a designer and get those people booking. That's what we do. That's what we specialize in. That's what makes us different. And that's why it's hard for a personal owner to do what we do, because we get to look at it through a completely different lens. So whether it's me based in Texas, or it's one of the 70 designers that we have worked with in our program, we got you covered. And it's for all levels of design. Just give it a shot. You have literally nothing to lose because you will have some type of return on your investment.
I love that. And Corinne, if it's okay with you, I just got a text that I'm so excited about. My loan was approved. I closed tomorrow at 10 a.m. on my next property. And you guys, this is still so exciting. Like I've done this now multiple times, but like this is so exciting. And like this is why I do what I do, because I'm in the thick of it as well. And the stress of, is this loan going to close? Can I afford these things? And I'm right there alongside you guys. And this just like never gets old. I'm so excited.
Love that.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Huge thank you, Jessica and Sarah. I mean, we could have talked about this for hours. Huge thank you to all of the folks who have stayed with us for this over an hour conversation. I know there's so many pieces of insight that folks will take from this. So thank you both so much. Thank you to everybody who's joined. Have a fantastic holiday. This wraps up our 2024 Elevate series. And with that, I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to the spa, and we really appreciate all of the support throughout the year. Stay tuned. Like I said at the beginning of the call, we will be announcing the 2025 dates for our virtual 2-day Thought Leadership Summit in March next year. So have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone. Thanks for your time.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Congrats again, Sarah.
Thank you.